myself situated here. Okay. Hi, my name is Monica Springfield. I am the GT specialist at the OUR Co-op, and I am the co-conference chair for AGATE 2021 this year. I'm so thankful that you're here. This is our last session of the day. Thank you so much for your participation in our conference. Thank you for visiting our vendors. And I am so excited that we have Wendy Kittler here with us today to talk about math anxiety. So Wendy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate it. And also, if you have any questions in the chat, if you'll just put them in there, Monica is going to help me catch those. And so let's just have a chat. It's going to be informal. I'm an informal presenter anyway. There may be someone jumping in with us in a second. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do now. So your presenters today were going to be Jana Jenkins and myself, Wendy Kittler. We're program advisors for the state of Arkansas, but we're not with the Department of Ed. We are with the Department of Commerce, and our background is in K-12. We work for adult ed in the Division of Workforce Services, and our mission is to help our students get better jobs and higher wages. So most of our teachers have K-12 backgrounds, and we are the two licensed teachers in our division who really handle instruction. But this is really us. So when the pandemic hit, our teachers did not, they were not all as digitally literate as we would like. So we tried to jump in there and be good examples, even though we didn't know what we were doing either. So we value creativity, we value problem solving, and that's why I wanted to be a part of this conference again. Agate is my home, love GT. Thank you for joining me today. So I have a background in gifted and talented education. Jana has a background in special education, and we both taught general ed before we came to the adult ed world. We don't just serve adults though. Our programs serve students 16 years and up. Often, some of the students we get are gifted students who decided, you know what, school's not for me, and they leave. So we share some of the same students that you have. These are some of the things our programs, adult ed programs in the state teach. And these skills should look very familiar to you as GT teachers. These are the same things that you teach in your enrichment classes and your identified gifted classes. So we are not just GED. We offer digital literacy, financial literacy, civics education, health literacy, and workforce prep. So along with ESL, basic math and literacy skills. So for today, for this topic, and I really appreciate you hanging in there. I know you've had a long day, even if it's Zoom. Sometimes Zoom can make you more tired. So I really appreciate you hanging in here with me. And I recognize some names and faces, and it's good to see you and be with you again. So we're going to talk just for a little bit about how to recognize math anxiety, define it just a little bit, and then maybe what it's not. We're going to talk about how those children who have math anxiety grow up to become adults with math anxiety. And that's who I'm serving now, is, the adults who maybe did not get everything they need in K-12. We're going to talk about math anxiety versus dyscalculia, and you will hear in different videos today, some people call it dyscalculia, some people call it dyscalculia. I'm not going to say which one is right, but I thought it was important enough to go ahead and address it, even if I don't know the right way to say it. We're going to talk about causes of math anxiety and then tips for overcoming anxiety. And so I wanted to throw this out there. Being gifted does not mean that you are necessarily gifted at math. That's why this is an important topic to me. So often your gifted student who's good at everything but math will refuse to ask for help because they're labeled as GT, and they'll tell you, I'm supposed to know how to do everything well. I'm GT. I can't ask that teacher because they're going to say, well, don't you know this already? That is what I learned through my creativity seminar when I taught at the high school level, because my students would come to me in creativity seminar and they would say, Miss Wendy, I just am struggling with this math class. And I'm like, well, have you asked your teacher to explain this, this, and this? I can't. They say I'm supposed to know how to do it already. They tell me, well, you're supposed to be GT. You should know how to do this. And so that's why I felt like this was an important topic to maybe bring before you today at a GT conference. If you haven't thought about it already, you might have to help some of your teachers learn, that your gifted students need help sometimes. They're not good in every area. So I don't know about you, but this is what reality was for me in school. This talks about the physical effects of anxiety. For me, it was math anxiety. And I believed this lie, this fixed mindset. I can't do math. I don't like math. Math is hard. I'll never use it in the real world. So a lot of students with GT that I had were very determined. They were good leaders. They were stubborn, and they used that stubbornness to help. But sometimes that stubbornness could be a stumbling block as well. And so as a GT teacher, you can help your students through this stumbling block. If they have convinced themselves, I'll never use math in the real world, well, you may have to help them remember, this is your perception of the real world right now. Your perception may change later. So I'm hoping to give you some ideas today to help you move your students past that mindset. So what is math anxiety? It's the tendency to avoid math because of the anxiety it causes. So it could affect the career choices that your students make later. If they think, well, I have the whole world open, I could do anything except this, you have to use math in this, and I can't do that. So if you are able to help them overcome this math anxiety early, then they may have a whole new world opened to them that they were just scared of before because they thought they were bad at it. So as performance increases, if they have a little success, success breeds success. As that performance increases in math, then their level of anxiety, it decreases. They have some success and then their anxiety goes down a little bit. Now that doesn't mean one success and they're ready to go, but you have to start helping them bridge over that. So math anxiety is really just it interferes with your manipulation of numbers. So it doesn't even have to be a real math problem as such. It could be a situation where they have to use math in a real life thing that comes up during the day. And the fact that they have to manipulate something mathematical causes them upset or anxious feelings. So I'm going to click on this link. I don't normally use a lot of videos in my presentations, but I'm going to share several because I feel like they explain some things much better than I ever could. And you're going to see a lot from this website because this website has some really good tips.
When French mathematician Laurent Schwartz was in high school, he started to worry that he wasn't smart enough to solve math problems. Maybe you know a similar feeling. You sit down to take a math test, and you feel your heart beat faster, and your palms start to sweat. You get butterflies in your stomach, and you can't concentrate. This phenomenon is called math anxiety, and if it happens to you, you're not alone. Researchers think about 20% of the population suffers from it. Some psychologists even consider it a diagnosable condition. But having mathematical anxiety doesn't necessarily mean you're bad at math. Not even close. Laurent Schwartz went on to win the Fields Medal, the highest award in mathematics. People might think that they're anxious about math because they're bad at it, but it's often the other way around. They're doing poorly in math because they're anxious about it. Some psychologists think that's because math anxiety decreases a cognitive resource called working memory. That's the short-term memory system that helps you organize the information you need to complete a task. Worrying about being able to solve math problems or not doing well on a test eats up working memory, leaving less of it available to tackle the math itself. People can suddenly struggle with even basic math skills like arithmetic that they've otherwise mastered. Academic anxiety certainly isn't limited to math, but it does seem to happen much more frequently and cause more harm in that subject. So why would that be? Researchers aren't yet sure, but some studies suggest that the way children are exposed to math by their parents and teachers play a large part. If parents talk about math like something challenging and unfamiliar, children can internalize that. Teachers with math anxiety are also likely to spread it to their students. Pressure to solve problems quickly dials up stress even more. And in some cultures, being good at math is a sign of being smart in general. When the stakes are that high, it's not surprising that students are anxious. Even Miriam Mizrakhani, an influential mathematician who was the first woman to win the Fields Medal, felt unconfident and lost interest in mathematics because her math teacher in middle school didn't think she was talented. So if you experience mathematical anxiety, what can you do? Relaxation techniques like short breathing exercises have improved test performance in students with math anxiety. Writing down your worries can also help. This strategy may give you a chance to reevaluate a stressful experience, freeing up working memory. And if you have the chance, physical activity like a brisk walk deepens breathing and helps relieve muscle tension, preventing anxiety from building. You can also use your knowledge about the brain to change your mindset. The brain is flexible, and the areas involved in math grow and develop. This is a psychological principle called the growth mindset. Thinking of yourself as someone who can grow and improve can actually help you grow and improve. If you're a teacher or parent of young children, try being playful with math and focusing on the creative aspects. That can build the numerical skills that help students approach math with confidence later on. Importantly, you should give children the time and space to work through their answers. And if you're an administrator, make sure your teachers have the positive attitudes and mathematical confidence necessary to inspire confidence in all of their students. Also, don't let anyone spread the myth that boys are innately better than girls in math. That is completely false. If you experience math anxiety, it may not help to just know that math anxiety exists. Or perhaps it's reassuring to put a name to the problem. Regardless, if you take a look around yourself, the odds are good that you'll see someone experiencing the same thing as you. Just remember that the anxiety is not a reflection of your ability, but it is something you can conquer with time and awareness.
Okay, now that might be a helpful video to show in some of your older enrichment classes if you have an all abilities class. So, just opening that thought to them that, if you feel like you have a fear of math, you're not the only one. Now let's overcome it. So the title of this slide really has the meat of it in it. As a GT teacher, you didn't cause the fear of math, but you have to deal with it. And your students will have to deal with their fear or their anxiety of math for the rest of their lives if they can't overcome it. So those students that I didn't deal with effectively, help them deal with their math anxiety in K-12. Now I'm seeing the product of that in adult education because we all share the same students. If we don't deal with it now, we'll have to deal with it later. So you have to recognize I may not have caused their fear of math, but what can I do to help them overcome it? And this is another short video from a student's point of view. And this is an adult who's recounting part of his earlier issues with math.
Struggling with math? Hug it. Tough math class? Hug it.
We're not
Just
seeing
not
a
ready.
video, we're just
Hug it.
hearing it. Are we supposed to be
College for me
seeing?
was both somewhat exciting but extremely intimidating. All my life, I struggled with math. I could not do math to save my life. 2 plus 2 literally boggled my mind. I was just fractions, decimals, and then you get into algebra where you start mixing like letters with numbers, No, I can't do it. I never could do it.
Okay, I'm hearing, okay, you can see it now? Claudia, you said you can see the video. I've paused it for a minute to make sure everyone's on it.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good deal.
And I remember I got kind of labeled, and I was always put in like the special ed classes for math students, and I just couldn't do it. And I could eventually do it if I studied super hard, and I could grasp it for about a day. But then after that, I would forget it. And I was eventually diagnosed with what's called dyscalculia, and it's like dyslexia, but it's with numbers instead of letters. And it's a math disability that actually a lot of people struggle with, especially with numbers. And so for me, math was extremely hard. And in college, you have to know how to do math. You have to know how to add and subtract and division, simple math. But then also there's algebra and pre-algebra and calculus and just heavier courses that I was going to need in order to graduate. And so that was another reason why I wanted to be a helicopter pilot, is because helicopter pilots don't need a college degree. You need flight time, you need the hours, and then you fly. And so that was kind of the only option that I had for myself, and I limited myself a little bit. But I also believe that if you persist, and you get really good at networking, and you get good at asking questions and leaning on people for support, and looking for avenues and ways to still accomplish your dreams, it's amazing what happens. I think a lot of people, sometimes they just see the wall, but they don't see the possibility, the potential. They don't see the other avenues that you could go to get around the wall. They don't think about the strategies that you could take to jump over the wall, or start chipping away to get through the wall. And so I had that mentality, thankfully, that I needed a college degree in order to be able to still function and provide for a future family, and hopefully find a career at this point in my life that I enjoyed and liked.
Okay, I stopped my video, but I've started it again because it was frozen. I think I was using too much memory there. But I wanted to point out what he said about persist and persist. As a GT coordinator, you know that you see students who don't know how to persist. Some of them are natural leaders. They are naturally motivated. But think about helping the ones who are not persistent, how to help them overcome that and be persistent again. So I told you that we would talk a little bit about what math anxiety is not. Dyscalculia is different than math anxiety. Now, there is a little bit which came first, the chicken or the egg. So they are different things, though. Math anxiety is not a true learning disability. Dyscalculia is, okay? Now, the math anxiety can be caused by a learning disability, but just having math anxiety is not enough to say a student has a learning disability. So before you can start preventing math anxiety or reversing it, you must recognize how to spot it. So you have to understand the signs and symptoms of math anxiety, and that'll help you help your students overcome this issue. It doesn't necessarily just go away on its own if you ignore it. Kind of like generalized anxiety does not go away unless you have therapy or treatment. So anxiety just does not automatically disappear because you get older. You have to do something to help treat it. So I'm going to share with you a little bit we're going to talk about math anxiety versus that dyscalculia and some of the signs and symptoms. And if this one does not work, again, please let me know in the chat and we'll just go on past it.
The
relationship between dyscalculia and math anxiety is a complex one. I think we don't fully understand that at this point in time because it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem. The anxiety can lead to difficulties with math, or difficulties with math can lead to the anxiety itself. When a child says that they struggle with math, it can sometimes be difficult to understand whether they have a fundamental math disability such as developmental dyscalculia, or whether they're just afraid of math and therefore don't like doing it anymore. A child that has dyscalculia will have real difficulties and persistent difficulties in learning basic math skills. A child with math anxiety, on the other hand, has a negative experience with math. Maybe a teacher who embarrassed that child in front of the rest of the class. And this leads to a trajectory of avoiding math. And that in turn might lead to math difficulties. You could imagine another child who, for maybe genetic reasons, has developmental dyscalculia, and the experience of doing math is just terrible. So they also develop math anxiety. So I think you can have either an isolation of one another, or you can have both. In our research and the research of others, we do find that children who we think have developmental dyscalculia very often also have math anxiety. I think it's important to distinguish between math anxiety and dyscalculia because we might treat them differentially. So if a child only has a mathematics anxiety, there's certain things we can do to help them cope with their anxiety, to be aware of their anxiety, and therefore to lessen the negative effects of that anxiety on their performance in the math classroom. Whereas if a child has developmental dyscalculia and mathematics anxiety, one might need to work both at their basic understanding of fundamental mathematical concepts as well as their feelings towards math. So I think it is important to distinguish between the two, but also to understand that they're related to one another and can often co-occur.
All right, and I quit sharing my screen for a second because I think that was part of the issue with you not being able to see it, but at least you could hear it. So I'm going to share my screen again. So the important thing here is to know that math anxiety can be overcome. For me personally, getting my master's in GT was the first brick in tearing down that wall. Dr. Betty Wood's class, when she talked me into taking math for gifted students, that became my group therapy for my math anxiety. So I realized through her that I was not stupid. I had just never been taught math in the proper way for some GT students to get it. So I hope that you can get some tools that will help you start beginning to break down that wall for your students. Here are some of the steps, and in the links throughout this PowerPoint, you'll find more information about each of these things. These steps to reduce math anxiety can help regardless of if you have an adult ed student, you have a preschool student, you have an enrichment student, or an identified GT student. All of these things are steps to reduce math anxiety. So especially that, make math fun. In the first couple of slides, I showed you pictures of my partner and I, Jana and I, dressed up during the pandemic when it first started and trying to make our Zoom sessions more fun. I'm here to tell you, learning to do Zoom sessions was not fun, but we tried to make it fun. We tried to make it fun for us. We tried to make it fun for our students who were teachers. And we tried to, get our teachers in the frame of mind of thinking, oh, I can make this fun for my students. And so, it may not be fun, but try to make it that way. But these steps are proven to help reduce math anxiety for students. So this picture was me. This is what math used to do to me in school. Well, shoot, not just in school, but taking the math part of the GRE. I thought I was going to die. I almost got up and walked out during the GRE because of the math session. So if math is not a student strong suit, it's easy for them to believe it's just the way it is. I'm bad at math, I stink at math, and that's always how it's going to be because I'm not good at it. Well, if they allow themselves to believe that lie, then they're going to give up. And like I said, if they're naturally gifted in another area and it's comfortable for them, they're going to take off and go, well, forget this math. I'm going to go do what I'm good at because that feels better and it comes naturally to me. So that's where that building persistence can help them a little bit overcome that. Now, this is not a video that you would necessarily want to share with your students, but I want you to watch this short little video and notice they take something that caused anxiety.
If you're trying to lose belly fat,
And
stop doing cardio. This sounds bad.
They made it fun.
I hate karaoke. Usually if my friends are going, I'll make up any excuse not to go.
Does it make you anxious? It makes me very anxious.
But I'm about to do it now to test out research about a really easy way to get over your anxiety. Most people say you should take a deep breath and calm down, but that might be exactly the wrong thing to do. Instead, you might want to try saying 3 little words to yourself. I am excited.
In these studies, we had people say, I'm excited. And when people said that, when they reappraised their anxiety as excitement, they actually gave better public speeches, they sang better in our karaoke lounge, and they did better on math tasks.
It sounds too simple to be true, but what you're really doing is getting yourself out of a threat mindset where you're focused on all the things that could go wrong and into an opportunity mindset where you're thinking about all the good things that could happen if you do well.
They weren't actually less anxious, right? They just did better. That's right. So anxiety, the arousal stays high and you stay in that high arousal state and just flip from negative to positive, from anxiety to excitement.
The reason is anxiety and excitement have a lot more in common than you might think. They're both aroused emotions. In both, the heart beats faster, cortisol surges, and the body prepares for action. It's much easier to get from anxiety to excitement than it is from anxiety to calm. In Brooks' study, after saying, I'm excited, people sang 17% better, were 17% more persuasive at speaking, and did 22% better on a math test than people who said nothing or tried to remain calm.
And why did you pick Don't Stop Believin'? It's the 21st most downloaded song on iTunes ever. It's not a particularly easy song to sing, so we wanted it to be just hard enough that it would make people feel anxious.
How are you feeling? I am excited. I'm excited. I tested out the study's findings at this bar. We couldn't use the actual song, so here's some other music instead. We were really good though, I promise.
Give it up to the ladies.
Killed it. No, it was good. It was good. And I think the excitement helps. I think if you're afraid, you should just say you're excited because it will make you, at the very least, it won't change your fear. It can only have a positive effect.
And I like that. I like that she said, it's easier to say I'm excited than it is to make yourself calm. So maybe that's a way that we can help our students overcome their math anxiety. So I'm going to share one more time back to the PowerPoint, and hopefully you're able to see that now. So help your students recognize the cycle that they're in and help them break the cycle. I thought this was a really good anchor chart. It's got some really good things to help them learn to say, to reframe their mindset. Some of my GT students, especially my twice exceptional students, they couldn't get past their stubbornness. Now, I like one of the new words that they've got for stubbornness. My son is twice exceptional, and he was diagnosed one time with cognitive rigidity. And I thought cognitive rigidity. That's what I've had all my life. My daddy just told me I was stubborn. So cognitive rigidity, I like that. So those students that have that trait, when you think of them, those are the ones that you may need to help reframe their thinking this way. Instead of thinking, I'm not good at this, help them say, what am I missing? Instead of saying, I give up. Well, I'll use some of the strategies we've learned. Okay. So just help them reframe their mindset. I'm not going to take you to this website, but this website has some good, it's a really good TED Talk kind of thing. And if you go to it later, I want you to skip to about 8 minutes, from 8 minutes to 10.5 minutes, because this is what one teacher's journey was on helping his students learn that math could be fun. Okay, this is one of the tips for helping students overcome anxiety. Let them get stuck. This was so hard for me as a GT teacher. I think I was awful at this because I wanted to help them overcome so bad. So I feel like I was not as strong as I could be sometimes because I didn't let them wallow in it. And that's really what this means. Let them wallow in a problem. And then go down here, look at these bullets. Then ask them after they've wallowed for a while, ask them, what was your first step? What are you doing now? What will you try next? And how did you get unstuck? Now, if they can't get unstuck themselves, something that I found was helpful with my creativity seminar classes, and I am not a math teacher, I'm here to tell you. So if one of my students had a question that came up in a math class and it filtered over into our creativity seminar, oh, Miss Wendy, I'm just so stuck. And well, that's when one of my other students would help their peers. So after they've wallowed in it for a minute or two or three, then let one of their peers ask them through this process. How did you get unstuck? Have you thought of this? What about trying this? Not give them the answer, but help them through their stickiness. Also, something that is difficult to do as a teacher, give them that uncomfortable wait time. I've tried to make this a better practice of mine during the last few years I taught enrichment. I tried to do better at giving them at least 10 seconds to come up with an answer before I asked for someone to volunteer or before I gave them a hint. So give them that wallow time, that uncomfortable wait time. I have a couple of math anxiety questionnaire examples for you here. If you Google math anxiety questionnaires, there are several out there that are good resources. This may be something good to do with your students, especially the identified ones who are a little bit older. So it may help them identify why they have a fear and what they might can do about it. And then these are just a few of the apps that may help with math anxiety or fear of math. There are so many things out there that were not available even 2 or 3 years ago. So math anxiety is just basically anything that interrupts your working with math comfortably. And it follows students well into adulthood if they can't deal with it early. So if they don't deal with it in your GT classes, then we'll be dealing with it in adult ed possibly, or in college, or when that student tries to go take the GRE like I did and was woefully short when it came to math because I had bought into the lie. So I hope that you will consider helping your students find ways to bridge past that fear. And I want to point out this last part at the bottom here. It says, no one walks around bragging that they can't read, but it's perfectly socially acceptable to say you don't like math. So let's change it. And I think as a GT teacher, you have the capability of doing that. I have our information here, and I do want to show you one other thing. I am not going to go through this presentation, but I did include for you a piece of another presentation that I have done. Diane Doyle, who is the GED director of our state, she did a math presentation with me, and it was on how to teach if you're not a mathy person. So not even as a GT teacher, we know we have to cover lots of subjects, but that doesn't make us automatically good math teachers. So this presentation will have some tips for you if you maybe don't feel comfortable yourself. And that's okay to own that to your students. Don't down math to them, but own the fact that you have had your own math anxiety to deal with. Give me just a second. It's about open. My connection is always a wonderful question. Is it going to connect or is it not? I'm going to share my screen real quick. Monica, am I doing okay on time?
Oh yeah, you're good. It's 3:11 and we have until 3:25.
Okay, good. I won't hit through this hard, but I will share just a few things. Thank you for that. So we brought in things like this to our teachers to show there are so many fun ways to embrace math now that were not available a few years ago. We wore this shirt when we did this training. I also just purchased the duck rabbit image that is on the shirt. You look at it one way, it's a duck, the other way it's math, and it had a math graph in it as well. We talked about how used to it was the fear of technology that everybody, talked about trying to overcome. And so I want you to think about now addressing that with math. Yes, for some people, a root canal is more fun than math class. So I'm not going to read through everything, but I want to show you the kinds of things that we're using in adult ed that will probably look familiar to you. We're talking about reading in math because most missed questions on the GED have to do with reading. Even though it's the math test, most of the questions that are missed are because of the reading content. We have these tips for reading and math. We've got different vocabulary. These might look familiar to you in GT. Yes, we are teaching teachers to use these in adult ed because brain teasers are a good way to break down math anxiety. So you've got Horsing Around, the Star Spangled Banner, 9 Lives. We talk about brainstorming. And I know that you do this in GT, or this is what I try to do in GT. Sometimes in life, everything is going smoothly, unexpected things happen. The important thing is to know how to turn those problems into solutions. Well, that's what we do in adult ed, and that's what I believe you're doing in GT as well. So we're trying to teach our teachers to use brain teasers to develop that reasoning ability. And see it, right, that next to last bullet, it decreases math anxiety. And you're focusing on the reasoning, not just the answer. Okay, we've got some, and this is Diane's part, and I am not as mathy as she is. So I'm not going to attempt to walk you through how to solve these problems, but the solution is there for you if you'd like to use that with your students. We give some tips on moving away from the pie chart model and into a linear model like the fraction tiles. And she built in some interactive things with you here. So she's made this where if you'd like to steal this, you can move these boxes and you can move them over. It won't let me in presentation mode, but there's some things that you can actually manipulate in here if you would like to use these with your class. We used this to show some different things you can do with percentages. We talk about increasing confidence using a logic matrix. I used these extensively in my, well, I started with them when I was doing K2 enrichment, and I found out when I brought some of them with me to the high school by accident that my high schoolers couldn't do them either. And so it was very helpful with my high schoolers. And so we continued that. We're teaching that in adult ed now. We discuss analogies and how this may break down some barriers for people who are math shy. And we talk also about not starting at a high level, but start with something that even the kindergartners can do, like the arrows. You know, everybody can understand pictures. So start at that level, even if you're dealing with a preschooler or a high schooler. I started my high schoolers, my 12th graders, at the same level when we got to math analogies because they didn't have any experience with it. These parts won't apply to you necessarily because these are our adult ed standards and some tools we made for it, but the resources will. I'm sure you're familiar with the National Library of Virtual Manipulatives. My state laptop is not set up to let the correct Java run, so I can't demonstrate it, but it has all of these different manipulatives that can work especially good for virtual learning. So, you know, try these, see what you think. Here's some more of the resources that I pulled from for this presentation. And so please feel free to beg, borrow, or steal from anything you can use in any of these. I hope that you are able to find a resource from something I've said today. And with that, I'd like to open up for any questions or discussions. I love interaction and being informal. So hopefully there was something that triggered something that maybe you can use.
Wendy, are both of those presentations in Sketch? Did you?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I've never seen that virtual manipulatives, but
Good.
I mean, I've been out of the classroom for a few years, so I wrote that down. That's awesome.
Thank you. It really helped me. I hate that I'm not able to demonstrate, and that's the only thing that might, you might have to get with your IT person in a district to make it where, you know, you can run everything. That is the only downside. It is difficult to kind of break through all those firewalls, but it really helped some of my students in GT. So I would feel bad if I didn't share it. Oh, Claudia, thank you. As you said, you will use some of those resources. Good.
Yeah, I can totally relate to the math anxiety. Um, it wasn't so much in elementary school, but when I hit junior high and had to start doing algebra, I I'm not gonna say I freaked out, but I really, and it followed me through high school and it got even worse in college. I ended up having to take a college algebra twice. And if I'd have just asked for someone to help me, but I can remember back in junior high, someone made me feel bad for asking, and ever since then, I shut down,
That's
and I
what
know
happened to me.
how to do that. Yeah,
And what pains my soul as a teacher, the person that did that to me and made me feel that way was my teacher.
yeah,
And she
yeah,
did say, well, you're supposed to be smart. Why don't you know
yeah,
this?
and
And
that's
that
not
hurt my
fair, you know,
soul.
for
So,
any teacher to say that to any child, whether they're GT or not. That's not
mm,
fair because all of us need help. Just because you're GT doesn't mean you don't need help. Because you may be strong, your creativity may be strong, you may be a great artist or a singer, but that doesn't mean you're strong in every subject.
mhm.
I was a really good writer. I've always been a strong writer, just not with math. But I don't think it would have been that bad if someone had just encouraged me when I was about 12 or 13. I think that would have helped me if someone had helped, gone a little further with me and helped me out and not made me
Thank
feel
you for
bad.
sharing. I appreciate you sharing that because I did. I felt like I was the only one. And
Well,
it
you're
wasn't until I got to Dr. Betty's class and I'm like, you mean there's other people that had the same experience I did?
not
And so
right. Exactly.
maybe if we start discussing math anxiety earlier with our kids,
Mhm.
you know, in
Right.
school now, maybe they won't go through their life feeling like, oh, I'm the only one that feels this way. So thank
Right.
you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, Monica, I'll turn it back over to you. And I sure do appreciate everyone's time. I am thrilled to participate in the Agate again.
Awesome. Well, we're thankful to have you. That was some great information, and I've taken notes for every session I've facilitated today. So that's been good for me as not only the conference chair and facilitator, but also as a learner myself. So great information. Guys, that's our last session. Thank you so much. We do have our award ceremony tonight, starting at 6, and you can find that link on our website page, and you can also go to our Facebook page. And then one of our coordinators, Jake Allen, he is a Agate board member, is going to host just an kind of an informal trivia if you're up for that around 7. And I think that information is going to be sent out by Dustin Seaton, our Agate president. But besides that, my job really is just to say thank you for being part of our conference. We hope you walked away with some information, made some new connections. And we're hoping that we'll have some students tomorrow that participate in our engagement day. So that's really all I have. Just thank you guys.